Beat always says he wants to eat McDonald's.
Yeah.
Right before the game?
Like it's like key to success.
I've played for almost 20 years, more than 20 years, and now it's 1 year of coaching. That's very little, and I'm still getting to know all that stuff around the game.
Coaches are more predominant now. They're more a factor.
All right, welcome. This is the Coach Podcast. I'm going to be sat here, Sycrone, Neo, Blade. We've all done the introductions. Dennis, Philip, Andre.
Andri, yes, Andri.
I got it. I nailed it.
It's like in Spain, Andreas. In Paris, like you said, Andre. I mean, some other countries, like maybe in Poland.
Andre.
Anything with your guys' names? Any tricks to those? No, you're all good. Really. We got plenty of time to talk about deep Counter-Strike stuff, so I wanted to start with a little bit of a fun question, or fun for me personally. I want to know from you guys as coaches, what's the dumbest or silliest reason you have lost a game of Counter-Strike? Like someone gets the wrong coffee order in the morning, tilts them off the face of the planet. Someone gets in a stupid conversation, tilts them off the face of the planet. Someone forgets to change the hertz on their monitor. Anything crazy?
I'm not sure.
Don't have to name names?
We used to, not when I was a coach, but when I was a player, there was a guy who hadn't had McDonald's on that day. He was really angry.
It just had him at that tilting point when the game started? Perfect.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Beat always says he wants to eat McDonald's.
Yeah? Right before the game?
Like it's like key to success. But I don't know. I don't remember actually, like to lose a game because of dumbest and stupid thing somebody did. I don't know. It's something like maybe, but I cannot recall now. Maybe from 1.6.
Okay.
Because people were like not so professional that day. Like I remember even one in CSGO, you can come like and see people before they have grand finals. Yeah. They like 5 a.m. They're like partying like in front of hotel, like drunk. Maybe you know some names, but
the good old days we call those.
Yes, but like maybe like this. Yeah. But they actually won, I think, eventually.
Yeah. Well, that's the one you hear about. There's plenty of other ones of them losing that we don't hear those stories. Yeah. So, I guess an easy way to start this is all of you guys have a playing career behind you in various versions of Counter-Strike as well. Is there a point during your playing career where you thought like coaching was going to be something cool you'd switch into? It feels like for you, Neo, it feels like it just kind of fell into your lap a little bit, but was it something you'd considered at some point?
Yeah, at some point. Not until, like, when I was playing, I wasn't even thinking about that. Then it just came, like you said.
Yeah.
It happened. Yeah, that's how I got here. But no, I haven't been thinking about that before.
Yeah. How hard of it?
When you play, you only think about playing, right? Like you're focused on that one, and there's some thoughts you have to think about your future for sure. Especially when we started playing, having a future in esports wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
It started changing from time to time, and I don't know. No.
Was it a tough conversation in your head when you got the offer? Were you like kind of weighing the pros and cons, or were you like, this is sweet?
No, I think it was pretty simple, especially with that team.
Right.
That was the opportunity that would never happen again, I guess. So yeah, that was pretty simple.
Cool. And you was also playing before.
Yeah, I wasn't
standing.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a decisive moment.
No, I think because I stopped playing at the time.
You're gonna have some good ideas.
Yeah. It was nice that it was actually FaZe, because I was playing for it and I liked the org and everything around it.
Yeah, you came in with some understanding as well.
Yeah.
For you, Sycrone?
For me, it was more of a smooth transition. I played around the top 30 in a few different teams.
Yeah.
Did make a full-time salary, but if you're not around the top 30, it's tough to make a good living. Yeah. And being in some of the Danish teams, getting a part-time salary, need to make things go around. At some point, I took a job to teach Counter-Strike at a Danish school.
Yeah, I heard about
the ecosystem is very different in Denmark. You
That's crazy.
actually have Counter-Strike in school, and from like 7th grade on, if you want. And I was teaching at one of these schools, and at this time, I was still playing, trying to make it, managing 2 jobs. And I then got an offer to coach Mouz Academy and start that project. I thought about it for some time, and I just committed because my work already back then was kind of related to it. I was always an in-game leader as well.
Yeah.
And half a year later, I was promoted to the main team. I'm here now.
That's nice. So you've had some lessons about it,
background
in school. Yeah.
But how does it look like in school? Like what? Like people just come any age? Like second, like just there's
what
like
age?
1 hour of Counter-Strike, or how does it look?
So in the younger schools, like 7th to 9th grade, it's a voluntary subject, and they maybe have it. Then maybe at some point they choose to go to a boarding school. Boarding schools are fairly big in Denmark. Usually it's for sports, different things, but they figured out that if we have esports on the program, maybe Counter-Strike, we can get more kids to sign up, and they get a fee from the government per kid they have signed up, right? And they all try and get the best kids to their programs.
So 7th grade, what age is it?
Probably like 12, 13 or 13, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But mostly at the boarding schools, and if you see any of the Danish teams within the top 5, top 15, there's a few of these teams. Most of them have coached at these schools right now.
That's pretty cool.
What do you teach in those classes? Are are you going detailed like with like utility, or are you like teaching bigger concepts?
Anything. It's not just Counter-Strike. It's also being on time, being in a team, all of this, what it adds to you.
Okay.
I think that's way more to offer than just what Counter-Strike is.
Right. Yeah. That's cool.
Because it's always, I think, different. Like if you ask, for example, 10 coaches to come to school, university, or whatever, and ask them to make a lesson, I think all of them will be different.
Yeah.
And then that's the thing. Like they basically trust you with your knowledge, and there is no like standard, like in other schools, in other like top, like in math or like others, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's actually very interesting because
it is. I could go on about it. Like most schools have a curriculum, or like this is what we want to get throughout the year done. Usually it's a good basis, a good fundamentals, but it's also getting them on teams, competing against other schools, having school championships,
That's pretty
having
cool.
the best school.
Yeah.
Wish we had that growing up.
Yeah.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
You've had the longest coaching career, Blade, and I mean, I think yours was probably the one we could see coming from further away, because you've always been that kind of in-game leader with a good reputation of the tactics and everything, and you've had plenty of success across the years. So for you, if you think back, was it a pretty easy transition? Was it a pretty smooth one where you're like, yep, this makes sense?
Yeah, it was like it was in flip side, and basically I was also trying to teach, like to have this process of development constantly, like with players. Like basically, I was calling this playing coach or something like this. Like because we don't have a coach.
Yep.
We didn't have a coach for a long time in Flipside, and even in CS 1.6. So basically, IGL must be the guy who is like doing something that all coaches doing now, and that's why for me it was like just I came out of PC and stand behind, but the process was kind of the same. And then it was like evolving constantly, changing, because like I said, you never know like what is like the standard knowledge you need to give them, right?
Yep.
And all players come with different background, and now if you take a player from any other team, you don't know who was teaching him, what knowledge he has. So this is always unknown territory, and I think it's still very bad situation for like maybe like 5 even years will be.
Yep.
You always have this random effect of what knowledge the guy has, and basically, like I've went from playing behind, and I was thinking about this already like last 1 year maybe of playing career, of player career.
When was it? When did you become a coach?
Flipside.
2017 was your last?
I think it was 2017 or 18.
Right.
Because I think I was coaching Gambit first. And I think it was 18.
Okay. Right. Yeah, because Flipside was still, you guys were still the major nightmare team.
Yes, I was coaching 18 Gambit like half a year. And then I moved to NaVi in 19.
Okay, cool. You two have the experience too of like you're coaching now players, or you've coached at various points players that you've actually played with as teammates. Yep. Is that a weird transition? Is that like a odd thing you kind of have to get over?
Not really. I think it helps a little bit. The player more, you know their habits, and I think it's a good thing.
Okay. Yeah. That was ominous.
I mean, other like some players, coaches without playing player career, like completely.
No, I mean you coached Simple for a while, and you also played on a team with him, and you also, I mean, you kind of picked him out of the pile as well.
Yeah, this is I think thing of mostly of Counter-Strike now, because the scene is like not so wide like in sports, and basically sometimes I think you could coach 5 years one guy 5 years ago, and now he can be in your team. I think because of lack of players of talent, I think it happens.
Right.
But if in future, I think it can be very interesting actually. If you will have totally like 5 new players, you have not even speak to them, you don't know them for the first time, and you don't know what does it like. Some people move to China to coach, right?
Yeah,
there was such
Peacemaker,
cases.
I think, went and did it.
DGL right now.
Yeah, a lot of. And just imagine what this is, like how it's possible.
Yeah, it's going to grow. We're going to have more schools, and not in Denmark, right?
We know where to go.
Yeah.
They're cooking Danish IGLs.
Now we know the secret. We're going to start popping them up everywhere.
I mean,
is it a secret program of
Danish
government?
But that must be something, no? We have so many good like Danish players, teams.
It's a never-ending stream of them.
Yeah.
What's it like coaching? You guys all have like a unique, different experience, but like similar in some ways. Where, I mean, what's it like coaching sort of like the superstars of the Counter-Strike age? Like, it's unique because you have very talented players, but they haven't really hit that superstar peak yet from a public perspective. You have superstar players, but they all seem to be. You have so many of them that they all understand that there's a space to be humble and a space to give the other guys room. And you've had to work with superstars who are just like, I'm the shit. Like, I want it my way. But like, what's it like working with superstars and having to balance how they like to play amongst other potential superstars on the team, or just amongst other players on the team?
Yeah. I mean, there's always pros and cons, right? Yeah. Of having that established personas. Like, they have their own ways of, playing the game, and sometimes it's more difficult to get them to do other stuff, right? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's the opposite, right?
Yeah. At least in Mouz, we've had the chance from fairly early on to nurture them in the culture we like. And I mean, still, even though we have done that, they still have some ego. They're still stubborn. They still want to have their way with a few things, right? So maybe we've had an easier time getting everyone to buy in on the culture we want to go for than you guys have. I'm a bit curious about Simple, for example, what he was like, and if there's a difference from back then to the team you have now, maybe.
Yeah, I think this actually connects a lot to what we spoke before, that what knowledge a player can have. Imagine you have a superstar and he's like one of the best in the world, and imagine you have not worked with him before at all. And now he can be stubborn, like you said, for example, and he can be really, really persistent, like on his ways, like I want to do this. And this is also another part, like how the team must be. Like, I don't think like all teams like this now, like when coach can say something and this is like his last word, because he must have like high like priority of dictating something, but have like a voice in the team. I think it's still not the same in all teams, right? Yeah. So imagine like how raw is like our industry kind of. And so this situation, like the situation with a superstar, he can have different knowledge, and eventually if you have some review, for example, also depends like characters wise, right? Like, will coach say to superstar like you was a mistake, or how he say it like in polite way, or like like to do this in appropriate way. And it's also a lot of details like in this topic, I think. And overall it's hard, I think, to coach superstars. Like, speaking about like Simple, I think you need to adapt a lot so system will work, kind of. You need to adapt to him, kind of, everything. Because he will play with freedom. Yeah,
you also don't want to ruin their game, by forcing him to do other stuff. So it has to be like like a balance between, all of that, I guess.
Yeah, and with young players, you can create like real system, real vision, what can be, I think, something in future.
right?
Which is like more, I think, stable, more progressive. I don't know, like for me, because otherwise it's like really raw. Because you change the coach, another coach is coming. He has the same process for 1 year of finding this relationship. It's very hard.
Do you find that players, like as younger players as well, when you start to like find success, and maybe you've gone through this, I'm sure you guys have gone through this, do you find that players, when they hit a point of success, whether it's winning a major, whether it's winning a Cologne or a big event or a good streak, do you find they sometimes have a hard time kind of, when the rest of the scene catches up and they start struggling, is there like a difficulty in getting them to try something new? Like players always seem to get attached to what got them that first taste of success. How do you, and then you have to break them out of that almost.
No, we still have a group of 5 beginners mindsets, and they're all still very curious about how to improve and grow, right? So
really?
we're not there right now, but maybe you guys have a different.
See you in a year. We'll do this podcast on this day next year. We'll have that conversation.
But see, I think this is a huge part of our culture.
Yeah.
I hope we maintain that. Yeah.
Right.
I guess that's a natural process, right? A lot of players go through that kind of stage, right? And they get to a point when they've been at the top, then there's some struggle going on, and but I think it's difficult from outside to help. Like I think most of them need to do it themselves, like to go through it, you know. When we talk about ego in the game, they have to have that kind of ego, right? They need to be confident, and like most of the time they listen to themselves. They can listen a little bit from the outside, you know, but they need to adjust themselves most of the time, I believe. Like, I mean, I've been a player for a couple of years, and I've been through that as well. So I think it's natural. People, you know, people get older, they change, and they need to go through a next stage, I guess, and just overcome all the struggles. You know?
I mean, you haven't just been a player. You were one of the superstars. Like, if you go back far enough, you're too humble to say it, but like you're one of the guys held up as the best 1.6 player we had next to Forrest. It's kind of like pick or choose. Do you ever think back on that time when you were the guy on the team, and as a coach, you're like, oh, I was the asshole back, like in that situation, like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see myself being an asshole at the time. I was just a team player, you know, and happened to have like good players around.
Yeah.
But I've like when we changed to CS:GO, I've transitioned to IGL as well. So I've been through all those stages, right? At some point, I struggled at some point, and so it helps me understand more the players. And I believe, you know, that's a good thing.
I think now it's different. The whole scene is different now. It's more competitive, and I think it can create more enthusiasm for and motivation for players, in my opinion, because maybe 10 years ago it was different, and people could lose motivation and this hunger for everything, like curiosity and so on and so on. But yeah, it also depends on background of a person. It's all like completely like what his goals now, like it connects directly, I think, to your like vision of the world and everything. And also, we don't know, when you're the best of the best, for example, you know how it affects you, like during imagine like for 2 years in a row you can be like the most popular player, like the best out of everyone, and it can affect you. I don't know.
Right.
I've never been there, so I think we cannot even compare, because maybe something a lot of attention, a lot of like interviews, everything, like people like basically how to say, praise you or like make you
there's a media
feel different.
There's a media environment around this now that we didn't have 10 years ago, and it's a whole new aspect that players have to deal with.
So you become superstar, like a legend, and maybe this process can change your brain completely. You know what I mean?
Especially when it's happening from like the age of 17, especially when it's happening when you're super young. Like that can mess with things. That can get crazy.
Yeah, there was no social media when it happened, you know, when I was
there. No social media, no YouTube.
The money wasn't that big. Everything was different.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah. So I mean, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, and I feel like I know what your answer is going to be with the beginner's mindset of your team. But as coaches, what's the most valuable kind of attribute you see in players that you want to have on the team I mean, for you, I'm imagining it's going to be that curiosity and that wanting to learn and that kind of eager to learn. But if you take away the actual game itself, what is the important quality that you see great players have more than just average players?
I mean, first of all, that part is a huge part of it. But also we have 5 players that buy into the project because we want to be greater than the sum of our parts, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone offers more than just in-game what they have to do. It's not just a caller, it's not just an AVP player, it's also someone who gives energy to the group, someone who's coordinating, someone who's communicating, someone who's good at facilitating team talks, someone who doesn't let small things stick, but they will take it up and have the good social skills to navigate through that tactical talk or that personal talk. I think that's very valuable for us, and we have 5 players who are not only good on the server but also off the server.
For you guys, like just a good attribute you find in your players?
I mean that's basically
he just nailed the answer.
Applies to every team, right? Like you need to have all of that. Like everybody brings something different to the table, and when it all connects, that's when teams work.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing in you need to have different people on the team. So there's someone bringing something different, and they I don't know the word. Like
actually,
connect together.
In all of that, we talk a lot about trust on our team and giving that trust. Also from the people who want to have it their way, that to have the best team, you need to give out trust. And this will sometimes be tested. It will go a little back and forth, but we kind of build our team on that.
Right.
Yeah, takes notes. He's got the slides for his classes. He can send you the PowerPoint presentation.
But in the end, you must have like something like one unit.
Yeah.
Very balanced with everything for sure, like because on the server you must work as one unit. That's true.
Yeah. What with you coming from the Academy project and you kind of in a similar place where you had this whole complete reconstruction of NaVi, you haven't had to deal with this just yet of just kind of starting a team almost from scratch or from.
We did NaVi esports camp also.
You did what?
NaVi esports camp, like beat it from this.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then Monis was something like NaVi Junior also.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
But what's it like when you're kind of getting a new roster together? You guys made this switch to English with the whole international roster after Simple left. You with the Academy team. What's step one as a coach? Like what's day one? You walk into that room. What's the conversation?
With like new players, you mean?
With like a whole new team. You're starting to get a whole new team. You want to build a whole new philosophy. You're the coach. You need to kind of lead them on this path to improve steadily.
And for me, it's easier when we switch to international that we have at least like Simple and Beat in the team. I know them, so it's not so completely unknown. Mm-hmm. And speaking about like when I came to NaVi, there was already Electronic, Flamey. I was also playing with me, and Simple. Like I mentioned, 3 players. Yeah. And also was Guardian, right?
Mm-hmm. Ah, good old Guardian. I miss Guardian.
And I forgot who was last. Imagine.
Seized? No.
No.
Zeus?
No. Boomish. Very good. Yeah. And Boomish, I didn't know at all. So yeah, for me it was always like players that I knew before.
You had some continuity.
I think it's much easier, yes.
Yeah.
Because that's why I said if you come to full Chinese, another culture,
right,
another completely unknown background, this will be a challenge.
Crazy.
For sure, crazy.
Yeah. For you, I mean, Steph, how many of the players were on that Mouz NXT team when you started coaching them? Was that lineup put together already?
No, there was no players already.
Okay.
I mean, JDC was kind of a talking point because he's German and they had a good look for him in Mouz. Mm-hmm. But all of the other players, I mean, I was hired like 2 months earlier than we officially announced the team.
Actually, these Academy players, they were a team before, somebody told me. Before Mouz NXT, they were playing together, right?
Only 2 of them. Okay. Shane and Shuhei.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
2 Polish players, yeah. None of the others played together. Okay. Yeah. Maybe on FaZe, like FPLC or no FPL for them back then.
So did you do all the scouting? And
yeah, most of it, yeah. Mm-hmm. And at some point, once I had a few pieces that I felt like they have some perspective, I want to include them a little bit, give them some of that trust early on. Yeah. I had them also consider like, what do you think of this guy, And I use my connections a little bit. Ask like, who do you think is good in Hungary? Who do you think is good here? Like, get a little
connections
bit of an
to the government.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, who's good in your schools, right?
The Danish school.
So this was from the very beginning, and like tactically on the server, I had a player's background. This helped a lot because I had already made a system that I felt back then was pretty good. Had some good things going for it. I was an in-game leader. We picked up Shuhei, who wasn't an in-game leader in his previous teams, but he was a playmaker, and he kind of knew how to call and coordinate, and he's also part Irish. He lived in Ireland for a long time, so he speaks pretty good English, right? Which is important, or can be.
Yeah.
And the first step for us was just, what are our strengths within this group? Does the roles play out pretty well? That's crucial, and then building a good foundation, having good shared values, common language, everyone buying in, what are our objectives, our goals, and we took it from there. Just step by step. It was very process-oriented at the start, like just fooling around, having a good time. There's no pressure, to be honest.
So Torshi, like GDC, Exertions, they didn't know each other at all?
No.
Wow. Like
That's pretty crazy.
New friends.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all of you guys now have to deal with the same situation where, I mean, you talk about just having, like, knowing and understanding somebody's background and, like, where they come from in life and their outlook. It's an easy thing to have on regional teams, but now that everyone has an international lineup, it's like that's no longer a given when you step into a team. That shared experience isn't there amongst a group of guys. How do you get everyone on the same page? Just takes time?
Day by day. Like you try. This is exactly the most important thing, to get to one page, kind of, the same page. And it's just trying to, people everywhere tweet like, trust the process, all this stuff. I think this is everyone's job. Like we are trying to see the mistakes or like these connections like between each other, trying to connect, like to have one vision, because eventually when you play like inside on the server, it's very important, like for me, for example, that every player will have like kind of the same radar, like this is the thing crucial. Mm-hmm. So anchor can see his own like situation on the map, and another guy can see his own. They must have the same.
They see the way the defense is looking on the mini map, and they all have the same idea of how to react to that
but this mini map like kind of in your head.
Yeah.
This is important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're all from different cultures, but Counter-Strike is same language.
The universal culture of Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Way to bring that home. I mean, you guys touched on sort of, I guess for a coach, the day-by-day thing just kind of gave me PTSD. So I'm just curious. I talk with Janko about this all the time, since both of us have had a little bit of experience coaching. And you guys, I always wonder if it's the same sensation, but coaching is like, it's just like a never-ending stress. Like you never feel like you actually fix anything. You just make something manageable, and then you have to go work on the next thing and bring that down to a manageable level. Like, do you ever feel like you've gotten to a point where you can just like rest and breathe? Because, players go home from breaks and they can take their 2 or 3 days off. And you as a coach get home from a break and you sit there and you have all the things swirling through your heads at all time, all the stresses.
I don't know. I don't think it ever stops, no. I mean, coaching is much more stressful than playing. It's so much like... Yeah? Yeah, when you play, you're busy with the game and your mind is in the game. And when you're just standing behind, of course, you're in the game a little bit, but like it's on a different level.
Right.
I find it more stressful.
Yeah.
Personally, I often have the feeling that we're behind. Tactically, or in the way we work, the way we do things, like this, we need to look at this or this or this. What gives me some calmness at times is that we're pretty good at using our resources. If it's from the media team, our sports psychologist, our players, like we try and have everyone contribute, and this gives me some calmness at times.
What do you have? You have a sports psychologist, as a performance coach, aka assistant coach / analyst, I guess you'd call it as well. Is that the two main help you have, or is there more?
Yeah, we have a pretty good manager as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah, but I think the best in
pretty
business.
Good, not great. Pretty good.
I would say the best in business. Yeah. I think you know her, it's Sabrina.
Yeah. And for you, NaVi you guys have a performance coach as well.
Hey, for us, it's always like never-ending process for sure.
Yeah,
I think it can be adapted to anything in life, basically, right? Like if player, he must always evolve constantly. If you do some other job, you must evolve constantly. I think when you stop, I think maybe you lose interest, you lose like, let's say like wings, like your dream, like you're pursuing. And also everyone is keep saying like nowadays, like, and maybe before, that when you reach the goal, like everything like become different. So the process is the main kind of source of energy, let's say like this. The process, like, because the path to the goal, like, is much more important and much more valuable than the real goal. I think a lot of people heard about this, right?
Yeah.
So this is for sure like the most important thing. And as soon as you stop, I think it can be not healthy. I think, right?
Yeah.
And speaking about this whole process, we can also say that our industry, like as we said before already, it's raw, and I think there's a huge room of improvement if you want to compare it to sports.
Yeah.
Right. So I think everyone could have like some crazy ideas about what can be the best. I don't know. Just imagine you give like someday like 5 iPads before, like between them up to players, and people are just showing something, I don't know, crucial, like to this, but you don't have budget for this, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you see that in other sports as well. I mean, since you just kind of went on about the process, just out of curiosity, because you have that terrible problem that you have to deal with, and that you set out a roadmap for this team and you won a major like 6, 7, 8 months too early.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you said it in an interview, like on like the roadmap we had, this major was a surprise to come this early. So how does that change the roadmap now? Does that change the way you approach things? Because you had such a huge peak, a huge victory so early on?
We kind of digesting this. Like, this is for me unique. That's true, and like for me it was one of the most valuable win for sure, because it was unexpected. It's not like you are building everything and you're like relying like we will win. I'm pretty sure we will win. You're just trying to do your best, and then you win. But so basically, it's a huge material, and you can build something for this material. And basically, without experience before, it depends already now. Like we could do something different after the major. I mean, but there's for sure pros and cons.
Yeah.
So basically, at one point, it make the team like, kind of like you in the beginning of your road, of your evolvement process, evolving, and then bam, like you're here already winning, and then some players that are not ready for me, like I'm ready, like I've been there before, I can like analyze like what happened, digest, blah blah blah, but I don't know what's happening in the head of other players.
Yeah,
I don't know what is their background, and this I think what one thing that I maybe missed, like I was not expecting like to have some changes inside the players.
Right.
But still, like it's experience, it's a knowledge. It's nothing like bad happened. It just a little roller coaster.
Sure.
And then you just need to calm down and
you skipped like 3 steps, so you got to go back
and get back to your path of development.
Yeah.
And calmly, like be humbled and stay there, like and reaching your goals.
Yeah. Neil, when you started coaching, were you surprised at all? One thing I've heard from first-time coaches, and I experienced it a little bit as well, was maybe surprised at how your time gets kind of divided. Because as a coach, you feel like you come in that role, and especially as a former Counter-Strike player and competing in Counter-Strike, you feel like your role is going to be so involved with tactical and strategy and so heavy inside the game. And that's a different reality when you step in and you realize how much work goes outside the game, just in personality management, player management. Were you surprised at that at all?
No, I knew it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But I've played for almost 20 years, more than 20 years, and now it's 1 year of coaching. That's very little, and I'm still getting to know all
learning.
that stuff around the game. It's a process as everything, and that's why I'm here listening to the more experienced guys.
Watch this one back, get some notes on it.
Yeah.
Have you had like a particular like experience or epiphany in within this year of coaching where you're like, oh, like that's how I'm supposed to handle this situation, or like, oh, that's
there's still plenty of those, and they're still happening. So it's a longer process.
Right.
Yeah. Getting to know all of that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you is how much impact do you feel like if we like narrow the scope away from like broad concepts of Counter-Strike and coaching and just look at like how you can coach an individual player, how much impact do you guys feel you can have as a coach when it comes to like, you know, if we just use the example of a struggling player? Because last year you were dealing with Torji, who is going through a tough stretch as well, coming into Cologne. At the moment you're dealing with Rops, who's having a really tough time. You've had a tough, or Ima and Bit had kind of a quiet start to this NaVi and have really picked it up after the major. But when you're a coach and you see individual players and you can tell in practice losing confidence, can you have an impact on bringing those guys back up, or is that a lot of having to put trust that the players will figure it out?
I think, like we mentioned, there's different players, right? Different personalities and different approach to each one of them. I don't know. I'm still in the process, but I'm looking forward to hear what they got.
So, like certain players, you know, you can be a little bit more hands-on and help them, and certain players, it's like leave them alone, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I think we're fairly hands-on in Mouz, but also that at times you need just a little bit of space. And figure yourself out. Maybe it's the summer break and maybe it wasn't great from Torch and maybe he needs a little bit of time just to rest and ease his mind. Oftentimes it's motivational. I don't think it was in this case. Probably it's just a fact about confidence. And then you look at, okay, how do you do things? What does your day look like? What's your routines? What steps you're taking right now?
Right.
There's a million things you could adjust or do differently. Let's try out some of them. Let's put in that effort. And if you put in that effort, then I mean, you're probably going to move on.
Right.
And I think he's in a pretty good spot now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all about dynamic. So I don't really care like if the player played bad 1 or 2 tournaments. I think if you see the whole like this line of constant analyzing, fixing, you know, and you know. Like in your head, it's like you see this process kind of. It's always one constant thing, you know. And I mean that you can compare 6 months and 1 month. In 1 month, you cannot see anything. In 6 months, you can understand the potential. Like is there a real problem, and so on and so on. I think this is the main thing because otherwise, like nobody is perfect. Nobody can play always the same. And just if you played. You must be reflective. You must like have a knowledge, a skill of scanning yourself, like always how you feel before the match, after the match. I think there's a lot of things to do basically because you need only the player can really understand what's happening. You can only direct him, right? And the best you can do is like to release the pressure, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Like there must be no pressure. And also support, obviously, like you support and like everything goes okay. Like fixing mistakes. Also, I like the things that a lot of people are generalizing a lot of stuff. You know, like maybe you had this experience, guy, that when you have after you lose, you have a talk. It's not like maybe one time. It can be like 4 years ago. Doesn't matter. And then players are saying something like. Not specific, like it's something like we are like bad in communication, for example, right?
Right.
But if you look inside the game, there was like maybe one specific decision that was the most crucial, for example, right? And I think this is more important than like generalizing everything.
Right.
You know, if you see the real problems, the real mistake, it's much easier to fix it because from now you go. What roots to this problem, you know? Maybe the guy just forgot his roles, for example, imagine.
Yeah.
And you literally see that we are losing like 2 crucial rounds just because he forgot util or what he must do in this round, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can fix it with post-plan or like with good like trades and like playing inside the round, in the mid-round. But still, if you forget about what happened at the beginning, it could never happen, you know, for example. So I think this is also important, like to see very deep, like inside, to really see the real mistakes of the player. Maybe then you can help him.
Yeah. Have you found that a lot of those? Have you found that there's ways to? How often do you adapt strategies for in like specific players, like whether on your team or as an opponent? Like when you're prepping for an opponent, like how often do you do you ever like sit there and say, this guy's having a really rough time, we're going to call less tactics that are towards like where he has a lot of responsibility? Do you ever feel like you need to take that kind of away, or is that sort of a no-no of showing that you've lost trust in them? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But I think it can go both ways. You can also try having him step up by, maybe it's a pressure on some of the players, but you know, let him do the play so he can build himself up.
Right.
I don't know. Like, there's different approaches, I guess. But I don't remember a situation like that where
like a certain player can handle the pressure of you saying, "We're calling your number, baby." Like,
yeah. But I don't know. I don't think it's like when you do it, you point it out. No, like maybe it's not a good thing to do. I'm not sure. I haven't had a situation like that.
It's the fun of coaching is you never actually know if you're heading down the right path.
Well, we had 6 players before.
Oh yeah, how was that?
This is also like a pressure. Like
that's like coaching on hard mode.
Or if you have a good academy team.
Yeah, it was very good actually, and we wanted to have 7 players, but then Valve kind of denied this thing. But this is good for healthy environment in the team, I think. Like when we have competitiveness and it's healthy, not like somebody's trying to make some bet, you know, because we have still the same goal. Yeah, and in that case, like I remember Flamey and Beat, we were adding Beat specifically like to see if Flamey can play differently under pressure.
That would be the motivation for him.
Yes.
Because Bit was playing, he came into the lineup and he was only playing Inferno for you guys, right? And then it started adding more maps in as it went.
Yes, 1 map, then 3 maps. Yeah.
And then now, look at him now. He's off to the races.
But isn't it like it's just a fight between 2 players who's going to be on the first 5-man lineup?
Yes, but at the same time, if you look at this with different angle, different approach, the player should, like in football, the player can know that he can be on the bench, like during the match, and then he can play next map, and then it basically motivates him to play better and better, like, and to prove that maybe we need to put you on all maps.
Yeah.
And for coaching aspect, I think it's very interesting that you can focus on the roles, and also I like the idea that you can have a fresh player in a best of 5, for example. Yeah. Always.
Yeah, that's actually interesting, like to see if like a game of CS with substitutes, like you know, 3 guys on the bench, and then you can change.
He just before he plays, he literally before he map starts, he literally can prepare everything like only for 1 map, and studies the opponent. Like if he has a role of, I don't know, lurking, just imagine how much damage he can do with fresh motivation and like energy to go inside the game and to be like a decisive factor of winning. And and then day by day he can be this, and now from this you can create a lot of stuff, basically. But Valve was saying that it's not good because it's only for rich organizations, kinda like, and others are
right.
But at the same time, my like counter argument was like, look, for example, at academies, people like receive their like, I don't know, 500 euros sometimes at that time. It was not a big salary, and some was just coming without any salary. There were some orgs that was doing like academy, and there was no like, if you want, you play. You don't want to, you don't play.
Yeah,
something we can provide you like travel. You could provide you like gear, everything. Yeah. So it's like for young players, it's good. Or even PC, you can rent you, right? So they give you a chance to play, and I think it's not about like big orgs at all. It's more about like evolution of Counter-Strike.
Yeah,
mostly.
And what that might be able to provide.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a little bit about where was this question that I had? When you guys look at kind of some of the problems you have within your teams at the moment, not that there's anything crazy, but I mean, if you look at just the story of, you know, Mouz having to overcome the stage, FaZe second place, you need that last 5 seconds to win the trophy. NaVi, obviously, you won EWC, you won the major, still have that whole Fluke tag hanging around. how do you guys approach those problems as coaches? Like, as if you're talking to the Mouz boys coming into this event, we see them kind of leaning into it and joking. Exertion especially is joking about kind of the stage jitters and all that. But that is kind of the final hurdle, it feels, for this Mouz team.
I mean, we're still in the process, and for us, we're a young team, and it's just one step further, right? And I think we're making progress every time. Behind the scenes, we're very professional about the learnings and takeaways from every time we've been on a stage or for every tournament. Yeah. I also don't want to take a group stage for granted, because sometimes it is tough to even make the stage, right? Yeah. There is also pressure there in that environment. We had one win in China on stage. That was a big step for us in a good direction. Mm-hmm. And now we have a new season now. Most likely we're going to come to more stages if we perform well. Right. A lot of sessions with our sports psychologist, Andreas, who's now on board, also shares some perspective from his experiences. And over time, we develop these young minds into killers on that stage, right? That's the goal, yeah.
For you, I mean, Neil, you mentioned earlier about like individuals, you want to kind of help them and talk to them and try and get them to adapt, but you also don't want to ruin their game. But if you take that to a team scale, to where it's like, you don't want to change the fundamental of how FaZe plays, but trying to find that one little adaptation to get you that last bit.
I don't know. Like we've mentioned before, you look at everything in a long term. Like, it's a process. Like, just another tournament, then you go back home. It's everyday practice. It's so many hours and so much work. And just you want to look at it from the bigger perspective, and just like the moment where you're at. If you always want to develop and like improve your game, and it's unlucky we've placed second in so many tournaments, but it's still good we reached the finals, right?
Yeah, it's got to be a weird conversation, because it is like, guys, we're doing great. Like, we're in second place of every single event. Like, let's not be too down. But at a certain point, you can't help but be down.
Yeah. I don't know. We've seen in the past teams that have been placing a lot of, like, for example, the old TSM, right? Mm-hmm. That became Astralis later. Yep. They've been placing second for a lot of tournaments, and then if you place second, you're still more hungry. You still want to win, so you still work. And I don't know. It's bad that we didn't win those. Yeah. But yeah, it's there's still more to come. Right. That we look at it this way,
And for you, do you feel like that, the Fluke conversation is a very much a public social media conversation. I can't imagine it impacts like the team in any kind of crazy way, but what's your perspective on the whole Fluke angle that people are throwing at you guys?
I think it exists mostly in public, because you must isolate team and players from public opinions. Otherwise you can live like in illusion. I don't know. It can imagine
it's like a fake reality.
Yeah, it's fake reality. If they can affect you saying something in a bad way, but they can also say it in a good way. It might maybe even worse. Right. And you can, if you depends a lot on public opinion, then you can get in an illusion, and it's very hard to fix your mistakes when you're in an illusion. In kind of this fake reality, it's very hard to fix. I had these issues like this. In 1.6 players, sometimes like people are thinking differently about themselves, like that they can have capabilities of something like unique, and it's very hard to change because it's very like strict. And so that's why we're trying to stay in reality. We always try to stay in reality inside the team. I'm trying always to explain like don't overthink. The same as we spoke before, like already, that sometimes players generalizing or overthinking. They can overthink like, oh, that's why we lost, for example, right? But what if it's not? What if it's not like they think? What if just really, I don't know, like, for example, didn't practice this map good enough? Yeah. And it was decisive map, third map. Right. Unfortunately, and we smashed like on other maps. Yep. Right, and then you must really know your strengths, your weaknesses, and stay in reality. I think that's the main thing. Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about just before we kind of start wrapping things up. I want to touch on current day Counter-Strike, just overall, not with your guys' specific teams, but we're now about a year into CS2, and things have kind of settled a little bit. Obviously, a new game, things are going to be changing at light speed, but for the most part, we've settled into a style of Counter-Strike that's being played right now. How would you guys, as coaches of some of the biggest teams and the best teams, sort of define the meta and the style of play that we're seeing now? Like, we've had so many changes over the years. What's the defining attribute of this meta?
I don't know if there's like a moment. Of course, there's a current meta, but it's always changing. You know?
So nebulous, yeah.
Like it's different things, new stuff. That's what's nice about CS. There's always new stuff you can come up with, and sometimes you can go back to old meta, bring it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like we had like the, old days of CSGO was like we started out and it was like pretty execute heavy, pretty much like kind of take your basic map control, execute. We've had like the Krieg meta, obviously. We had the Astralis era, which sort of brought in like a very structured protocol, utility-based meta. Here now, it almost feels like there's, in contrast to that Astralis meta, it feels like this is the one where it's like players have a lot more freedom to break the rules of the textbook.
Yeah. I think every team has different systems still. Like I think people approach differently. And there also always can be tier 1, basically, if you speak only about them. Maybe there are some similarities, but take VP, for example. In this aspect, I think they look completely differently if you compare them to FaZe, for example, VP and FaZe, right? So that's why it's hard to speak about meta. It's very subjective.
Yeah.
But still, the scene is very competitive now. That's the main thing. Like if you're comparing eras, the scene is now very competitive.
Yeah.
And I think this is normal, and it must be even better, like day by day, like more stronger, more like competitive.
Yeah.
And basically now maybe like there'll be more teams with with coach aspect more, like when coach has more power in the team.
Yeah.
Maybe that can be a meta.
I see where you're going, because I think we all agree that the meta within the game's always changing and evolving. Maybe in CS2 it's way more about peaking than it was before, and breaking the smokes and these things. But I think you call the scene still very raw, the industry. It is true, but I think also in the last 5-10 years, everything has taken a huge step forwards. Coaches are more predominant now. They're more a factor. We all have international lineups. This wasn't the case when you two were playing really wide, right? And this brings different cultures to one team, different ideas, different perspectives, and giving out this trust to everyone. I think it on the server translates to a gameplay that's more diverse, that is happening on more fields at once. Yeah. And I think even though we all have an international team, we have very different philosophies. I think you guys have a very tactical approach. I think you guys have also a lot of shared responsibility, but I assume Finn maybe, I don't know if he rules it with an iron fist, but I think he gives out also a lot of trust to his players. Yeah. And you have to manage superstars often, right?
To everything, you know?
And we have a young team that kind of grew up together, learning everything together, not just the game, but outside the game, girlfriends, moving out, like all of these small things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe now it's international meta.
Yeah. Maybe the meta is going to be you gotta get these players away from girlfriends, have them focus on Counter-Strike.
Because now literally like
NiP tried it.
This is tendency of international teams being successful. I think this is maybe the main change if you're speaking about eras, for sure.
Yeah, and also some teams push this a little bit further, like with their performance model. Astralis, I think, is a good example. We didn't have performance coaches. We didn't have assistant coaches. You didn't even have a coach back then, right? And like the staff is developing a little bit, and yeah, I think this is the biggest change.
He was coaching when coaches could still talk during the round. You miss it?
I think that I was coaching Hellraisers.
Yeah.
Once, one tournament. Yeah, but it was only one tournament, and I think there was other coaches. Like I think Starix was coaching Natus Vincere, NaVi, and I didn't ask him anything about this, but I mean, it was several tournaments. That was interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Like you constantly can speak. But hey, I remember now because on when I was coaching Hellraisers, I remember like for example, we play Cloud9.
Yeah.
And we just had a game plan or something to do. The guys, let's do this now this round, like, and you don't need to tactical timeout. You just say, like, guys, okay, this round, you do this, don't forget, please. Like on practice, basically. Yeah. And then careful, there's like nothing here, and this, he likes to play there. And get this push, please, and so on. You can always, like, slowly coming, like, you can correct everything. It's too OP, in my opinion. Like, you can say, like, guys, careful behind, take the bomb. You can say everything. Actually, online was like this.
Yeah.
I remember when Kuben was the first coach, I had a coach, right? Like, we brought him to VP, and it got to a point when he was even given info instead of, like, for the players. And they, that's not a good thing, because it should be them not being lazy with the comms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could talk all the time, though.
Yes.
But if you can do it at the time and it's allowed, it's like you kind of gotta do it.
You can, yeah.
Is it weird up there because you guys have the headphones and you guys obviously get to listen to the team comms, your team's comms, but you guys don't get in-game sound, do you?
Yeah,
no.
That's weird.
Is that a very weird feeling?
Yeah, there's been a couple of clutches. I was like, not sure what's happening.
Yeah,
if he won or not.
You can't hear the bomb timer. You can't hear grenades going off, and you're just looking around at all your players trying to figure out where the next action's going to come.
Yeah, This is a weird feeling.
Does it keep you out of the feeling of the game? You know, as you've in-game led, those sound cues are so important to, like, the information that you can gather as a leader. Does it sometimes make it difficult to identify what's going wrong in a round because you don't have that you don't have all that information?
Not so much, but maybe at times, if we did have in-game sound, it's easy to tell that, hey, you're not communicating what you probably should have in this moment, or the rotations were off, and this you can tell if you have sound, but you can't when you're on a stage or if you're behind them in the studio, right?
Yeah, it's also different when you have the sound. You can just switch, like you're on your PC, you just switch between perspectives, right?
Yeah.
And in here you have to walk behind these guys, and like there's more stuff you're missing out.
Yeah. Find the guy with the best radar.
Yeah.
So basically, you need to have a team that when they speak, you can piece the puzzle, like, on the map, basically.
Yeah.
And for me, like, not a problem at all. Like, I get used to this, you know.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like this is normality, kinda. When I see players doing something, communicating, and there's no game sound. I remember PGL or somebody was doing this. You could coach sitting on PC or E-League.
There was something like that.
E-League, I think,
Sitting on the PC, and you can hear, and then you can do timeouts. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that'd be a cool take. Last question I want to talk to you guys about and just get some of your thoughts. You mentioned that the whole scene has now gotten better, on both like a team scale and on an individual scale. There's such a large conversation at the moment within the community when we see roster changes, and we're talking about potential roster changes, discussing the roles of players. And obviously roles on the team and people who can fit into those roles are critically important. But as a coach, how much adaptability do you feel like there is in players between roles? You know, like if you need to make a change, like, you know, is it like, oh, we need to get a hardcore anchor?
Depends.
Can you take a player who's, I mean, it's going to be player to player, obviously, but how adaptable do you generally find players in those scenarios, being able to bounce between roles?
I think it depends, because if the player is young, he can change the role all the time.
You think it's easier for the younger players and the more experienced players to change their role?
For sure, because young player has no knowledge yet. He has no knowledge.
Blank slate.
Like of tier 1. He can he could learn something like of a playmaker. Maybe it's something he likes. But you can instantly switch him to lurker because he's not good at playmaker, for example. And you can say, like, this is for you, like, much better, try this now, and then you teach him in this aspect. I'm pretty sure he will not be, in half a year, he will not be worse than he was a playmaker, in my opinion. It depends, like, on the age of knowledge. I think it's very hard to change grown up players, like, who was already, like, build it up fundamental, like 26, 27, they have already their vision, it's very hard to change these kind of players. They have reactions like this already, you know. And there's the pace maybe inside of you. If you can play like fast pace or slow pace, like you want to freeze after the decision after the entry, or you want to insta extend something. I don't know. It depends of on your. But young players, I think it's easier to change. Even if he didn't do this, you can show him this, and he will start doing this.
Yeah. I also value versatility a little bit, and that's something we have in Mouz especially. You can also get to the other side of the coin where you change too much and you lose identity. And if you want to change an anchor play into being aggressive, maybe it's not a natural fit. You try it out, you test it out, and suddenly you find yourself, let's try this for a period, let's try this for 2 tournaments, and then you will lose your identity a little bit. So I think it's also dangerous to swap around too much. But I get your point totally about this is the beginner's mindset and a more fixed mindset, right? Already rooted within you, how you view the game, how you want to play the game. I think you can still, at an older age, have an open mindset for things. I think I see that in Philip right now when he's talking about coaching, coming here to learn a little bit, even though he's at 20 years on the biggest of stages, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember times when there was basically like an IGL role, upper role, and the rest
everything else was just a rifle.
Yeah, like I mean, it's different approach now. People have set roles, and but I feel like it's not a bad thing to be versatile. And like, for example, entry fragger is low HP. He has to switch his role with other persons. So it has to be an ability. Everybody should be, should be able to,
to step in when needed.
But then you don't want to change too much. So it's a fine balance between everything.
I just find it so interesting. Do you guys agree that it's easier for the younger players to adapt? Because I would assume that the experience factor would be like...
Yeah, also experience factor for sure. Like Nico was IGL, he was OPER.
But I know what you mean when you say like older players get set in their ways a little bit.
On a short term, and the more experienced player will have an easier time, of course, but on a long term, 6 months,
I think
12 months,
if you have experience and a lot of knowledge, seeing maybe your teammate like for a lot of years doing something, speaking with him, you know something about this, but it will be not also too hard to switch, for example, between anchor and playmaker, but you still will always, if you're becoming an anchor, for example, electronic, he wanted on Mirage connector to go A side by himself, right? And at the same time, now he's like more completely different game. Like it's like isolated sometimes, like deeply inside himself. And in connector, he was in charge like with connections, like with other players, like trying to communicate.
Yeah.
It completely depends. Like, and I think everything is possible. It depends on person, on his skills of about even talent of knowledge, like how his brain works. Everything is possible because it takes time, hard work, and like it's basics, right? Like to if you want to reach something. But at the same time, how to change, for example, beat will be OPER. You want to be him to be OPER or no? Like T side, like main OPER. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
It like nobody can even see him like as this guy. And that's what I'm talking about. Like if you put him now like on entry player like beat like a Mihai, Ime, it's also different. Like I think that he is still much better, like a little bit different role, for example.
Sure.
You know, I think this playmaker role, like outside nuke on T side, it completely like differs from everything else. Completely, like in terms of how your brain like reacts, how fast it reacts. How are you focusing like only like on micro like details, or you controlling everything on the map? If you are creating decisions, and I'm saying that because we tried already with different players, and I saw how.
I was going to say you're playing with Alexi out there these days. Or not?
I mean, I'm on T side.
Yeah.
T side. I mean, no, CT side is a little different. You can be passive, but on T side you need to dictate a lot of stuff there, and I think sometimes player is still better in some other role than he can.
So you're not only fitting him into the skill set of the Counter-Strike that's being played, but also of the value that he can bring in terms of communication.
Yeah,
in terms
like
of
it connects with a personality. Like the person is, he speaks a lot, or he's quiet guy.
So a lot of factors matters here. Like he said, these factors also knowledge, experience, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And for sure there are some talented players who can change any time. Like at 29, they can change. I accept maybe op, maybe, but
Yeah.
speaking about Nico, he was sometimes really good op, right?
Yeah.
When he was playing with op. I don't know, like Twist now is not so old. He's 24, but
Old in terms of years played.
switch to IGL, for
yeah.
example, right?
Yeah.
Instantly, also different role.
Yeah. Then you're also talking about the most talented players we have.
Yes,
Yeah.
also actually is a very huge factor. But,
Well,
but speaking about one interesting question, what about, do you think that players need a strict diet? Like, because, like in sports, you know, strict diet when you on biochemical like level, like things in your brain before the match.
Yeah.
You got bit on your team and you said he was ordering McDonald's before the game. So.
Yeah, that was a joke, but still.
Yeah. I think you put it well that the industry is still raw. And also when we're of course trying to teach our players the benefits and also promote good eating time, good eating habits. I mean, there's always a topic at every tournament, but we're not so strict that it has to be this way. Also because if it's too much at once, they can't follow along. Like it doesn't become natural for them.
Right.
Yes, maybe that's why we have like performance coaches focusing on this a lot.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's more about like how they, sell this to them.
Yeah.
It's also very important. Like imagine you say like you'll be a superhuman like now.
Yeah. They need to understand it themselves. It's good for them and for their longevity and like it's gonna be just benefit for long term.
Yeah. Well, then you go down that road and it's not just food. It's also sleep. It's also the schedule. It's also the exercise.
Yeah. I assume you guys are already doing part of that, right? The holistic approach. Yeah.
I think that if you...
They got a little bit more help in their orgs than you do.
We're dealing with players here.
I mean, like, we are trying, but like I said, it's really hard because they're not, like, real sport people, and they're, like, gamers. I always say about this, like, people are really gamers, like, they like to play games, and it's completely different.
But that's why it's even more important, actually, because, they're not sports, they're not doing exercise.
But at the same time...
They're sitting in front of PC, which is not healthy.
Like if you can concentrate more during third map, it can affect a lot. And also not even concentration. It's more about like how good your brain works. I think like there's some on biochemical level, like you can evolve this hugely. And in sports, like it's a huge thing.
Right.
And people rely on brain a lot in sports.
Well, it'll get there. I mean, it keeps going back to the same point of industry is still very raw in a lot of ways, and no matter how many leaps and bounds we've taken over 5 years, we got plenty more to go. Moving.
How many sleep you have, for example?
How much sleep do I get?
Yeah, I mean, and for players also. Sometimes can sleep 5, 6. Sometimes you cannot control this, but
sometimes 2 hours after
how
party.
important is this? Just imagine.
You show up to the practice room the next day, and you guys like, I was playing Face It till 6 a.m., and you're like, that's not cool.
I'm fine, guys.
Do you do anything for the sleep thing? Like, have you worked on it with the guys?
For example, we had esports camp, and our esports director, like Ami, he was there like as an esports camp coach, and he was cutting like down PCs like there was like go sleep guys at 2 a.m. or something, or 1 a.m. Like that was deadline,
That's awesome.
I've heard one of the teams had that, like performance coach doing that for them. Like,
and we had it like maybe stories from people about their parents. Like, what are you doing? Bam. No electricity. TeamSpeak, disconnect.
That was how they did it back in the day. All the parents take the power cord out of the PC, hide it from you, take the keyboard away. They didn't know that we could go to the store and get them for like $2. But they did their best back then. We got 2 minutes, so I want to ask one last question that popped into my head. Sorry to juke you guys on that one. I want to get your guys' opinion on the in-game leader role. You just kind of mentioned Twist switching into it at the moment. We've seen Nico kind of switch into it for just an individual event and do a good job and win a trophy with it. Different than having to do it full time. But with how good individual players have gotten over the years in terms of their skill, but also in terms of their understanding of the game, do you think we're in a period of Counter-Strike where a lot of the pressure has been taken away from in-game leaders in terms of, when we were playing, 15 years ago, the in-game leader was the voice in every move that was made across the map. Like you didn't do anything without an in-game leader telling you. Now, players are smart enough across the board to be more autonomous and have a little bit more freedom. And that's always a conversation with in-game leaders who want to have too much control or want to set up too much of a structured system with players who want to have more freedom. Do you think in-game leaders at this point, I don't want to say their job has gotten easier, but some of their responsibilities feel like it's been lifted off their shoulders over the past few years?
I feel like this thing haven't changed. Like I still remember in 1.6 it wasn't like this. Like, okay, IGL is important, but you have different teams and you have different people to step up at different times, you know, like star players, for example, calling mid-round a lot. And it's been happening in CS for a lot of years. And I think it's up to the team how it looks like, what's the structure and what kind of people you have.
Yeah.
Because you can have, like, of course, the IGL has to work more and there's more pressure on that, because the IGL's role is not only leading, but it's also deciding when have the players lead themselves or like make calls.
Right.
So it's also a huge part of the job, and that's how teams struggle when they believe star player is better IGL than IGL, and they start going different directions, you know.
Weird. Which org did that?
And there's been a couple of teams I've seen. Yeah, but it is a balance, and it depends on the team, like whoever is on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the pressure has become less at all. I mean, probably the responsibilities are more divided now, at least in our team. We try and distribute a little bit. I take care of some of the tactical side. Maybe some of the playmaking players add to the table, and this releases some of the work, but then there's other work. And on the server, I think it's still important that someone has the final word that we all trust and follow in that moment. And this is the most amount of pressure, and that's still there.
Yeah, now the main problem is what is the correct way of building a system, what is the correct way of this development process, like how it should be. Like, for example, you have a GL, you can hire him, for example, and he's saying like, he's trying to be like this. And then you can ask him like, are you sure this is the correct way? Like, who said that? Like, who said that this must be the correct way? This is the main thing, I think, because it's not like sports now. In sports, like everything already like set in terms of what are the best approaches to everything, I think, because there was a lot of time of evolution.
Yeah.
I think this is why our system, like, and industry is raw because of this, because there were some people who can say that it's correct because it was like this 10 years ago. It's not an argument, like if it was 10 years ago like this, maybe it must have improvement. In my vision is like AGL must speak, like players must have full freedom in terms of reaction on the map.
Okay.
Like, and he must not ask any permission, anything. Like they must, if they think is a smart way to do something, they either do like solo move or like connect with each other to change everything.
Yeah.
This is the only way of reacting on the map.
Yep.
Otherwise, one player inside in the middle of the map cannot see everything.
Yeah.
Right, and fast also speed of receiving information, like you trying to digest everything and how it's possible.
Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate that. It's been great, guys. It's been real. Good luck this week.
Thank you.
I hope you guys all enjoyed it. We'll get some coaches on more podcasts because this was awesome. Thank you, guys.
We're looking forward to Twist versus FaZe.